Welcome back to my channel. This week I'm doing a melt and pour soap tutorial using my 1 pound soap mold that actually holds a little bit more than 1 pound. But this is good mold for like testing out designs and stuff like that. I'm also going to be using the shea butter soap base for the white portions of the soap. And then I'm also going to be using a extra clear melt and pour base for the other parts of the soap design. The fragrance I'm using this week is white tea. I've used this in a couple other soaps. It's a good fragrance oil. It comes in plastic bottles from Candle Science. Their shipping is usually pretty cheap if you're looking to get some new fragrance oils. I'm also using my favorite glitter or gold mica and this Klein Blue mica from Nurture Soap. I also have some, these were colored gold. I've had these in my box for probably about a year and not used them. I was going to do it for a different project, but they've just been sitting in a bag. This is the white soap base, so I'm going to start off with a little over 4 ounces, and then I'm going to go ahead and add the fragrance oil as I go along on this project. So I'm just going to add a little bit at a time and kind of mix it in there for each layer or segment, however you want to decide to whatever you want to call that. I'm losing my words there. But I just went ahead and I mixed it in after I've melted it down. And like I said, just doing a little bit at a time. I chose to use my little measuring spoon instead of the dropper this time just because it was going to be easier for this type of design. I'm also spritzing down my mold really well because it helps with releasing the soap at the end. Also, if you have a hard time cleaning your mold, it's good to just spritz it down with rubbing alcohol. There was a bunch of glitter in this before I started the tutorial, and I just spritzed it down and wiped it out with a rag, so it came out pretty clean. But for the first part, I just want to go ahead and dump the shea butter base into there, and I want to let it start cooling. Ideally, I should have let this cool a little bit longer when I did it, but I, as always, get a little bit excited to pour the next part before that starts sitting up. But next time I do this, I will let it sit a little bit longer, wait till the skin starts developing on the top layer of that. But for the next portion, I am melting down about 2 ounces of a clear soap base. You can use any soap base you want. And I wanted to make sure it was pretty hot when I added it to the white layer at the bottom because I'm just going to kind of drizzle the soap, you'll see, on top. And I wanted to give it sort of a marbled, swirly look. It didn't come out exactly as I hoped for, but if I would have waited for both of the soaps to cool a little bit more, it would have came out better. This, again, is my favorite mica ever. I use it all the time, and it disperses really well. Sometimes you have to use a little bit of rubbing alcohol, and I used about 3 scoops of it to accommodate for the about 2.5 ounces of melt and pour base I have here. That's just the desired color that I wanted, to make it a little bit darker so you could see the actual pigmented color of the gold. So I was checking to see if the skin was forming. I thought it was starting to, but see, it kind of just all mixed together there, and that's not exactly what I wanted. But like I said, next time I do this, I'll wait a little bit longer, and when I poured the top layer, I kind of did the same thing. That one I waited a little bit longer so it has a better design on the top. You'll see at the end here. For the next part, I measured out about another 4.5 ounces of clear melt and pour soap base just to get me started for the next layering process. And I went ahead and added this dark blue mica to it to make it the colors have a nice contrast, and everything would still pop by using this color. So I thought it would be a good unisex color for the soap. I waited for the soap, the white layer with the gold, to dry for probably about an hour or so before I went on to the next layer. I also made sure that it was hard to the touch, and then I went ahead and scored the soap really well so I can pour the next layer. One thing I did forget to do, which I would remind you guys to do, is to spritz that with rubbing alcohol before you start pouring this layer. So that was my mistake there, but what I did was just pour a little bit, I want to say just enough to cover the bottom there, and I kind of let this sit for a couple minutes while I went ahead and started prepping the rest of the soap. I knew I was going to need a little bit more, and I kind of was trying to go for like a gradient effect with the blues, but I don't think I had enough soap for you to see at the end, like the final cut, you'll see is there's not enough difference in the contrast in the soap that I've added. So once that skin was starting to harden on there, I went ahead and took these cubes that I've been holding onto for a very long time, and I went ahead and just kind of dropped them in there. I made these a long time ago, like I said, and it's just that same gold glitter dust on the inside for the mica, and the outside is a little bit of activated charcoal and a black glitter mica. So I just went ahead and started placing these chunks into the soap mold as best as I could, and I wanted to get as many of them used in the entire soap thing. So I just, like I said, kept stacking them up, and I kind of shake the mold a little bit to get air bubbles out of the soap, and you'll kind of see some in the final product how it turned out. But overall, I'm impressed with it. One thing I do want to say is I waited for the blue soap to start getting a little bit of a skim before I started to pour it, because I didn't want to melt any of these chunks that I had on the inside. So once it started getting a skin, I knew it was safe to pour. I also did not spritz the cubes down with rubbing alcohol at this stage because I didn't want that black powder to come off. You don't have to necessarily spritz them down with rubbing alcohol when you put them in the bag and do the outside coating, but it does help them stick, so that is a tip if you want to do something like this. Once that part was done, I went ahead and melted down a couple more ounces. This is probably about 2 ounces of soap to go over the top layer of the soap that's there. That was sitting probably for about an hour to 2 hours before I went ahead and started scoring and melting down the next white layer. I wanted to make sure everything was pretty much set in place and nothing was going to melt through. I also tried to make sure that the white layer was not overly hot when I was pouring it. So I wanted to do a similar design effect on the top, which the top came out much better than the bottom layer on this. And I did kind of wait, since there wasn't as much soap with the white soap and the gold soap, for the temperatures to cool down a little bit, which also helped the overall design of this. And you'll see it on the final cut. And now finally the part you've all been waiting for, where we take the soap out of the mold. So at this point it has been sitting for another 30 minutes or so before I popped it out for that last layer. So about a total of 3 to 4 hours of the soap sitting in the mold before I take it out and try to cut it. This mold, it can be a little bit difficult to get soap out of, but as long as you break the seal, the soap comes out pretty easy. So you can see how all the gold kind of sank to the bottom on that first layer, and on the top I've got the desired look that I wanted. It's very marbled and I absolutely love it. I just wish the bottom would have came out that way as well. So as I was cutting this, you'll see the soap kind of fell apart, and I didn't even notice it at first. But if you do have that problem, a little tip is when you're cutting soap is to actually turn the loaf on the side for when you're doing layers like this, so that doesn't come apart. I'll just go ahead and kind of reheat a little bit of melt and pour soap and then more or less glue that back onto the bottom so we don't have that issue. So like I said, you just turn it on the side and then you're not putting much pressure on the layers, and this keeps the soap from the layers popping apart. And you guys can see the little gold chunks with the black outline. It shows up much better in person, but I am pretty pleased on how the camera is picking it up as well. So if you guys like this melt and pour soap tutorial, don't forget to check out some of my other videos and like and subscribe to the channel for more videos. I try to upload at least one every week. I just want to thank you guys all for watching and checking out my videos because I appreciate all of the support.